these guys know a lot about making movies, they know a lot about moving trains, and they know a lot about making movies on moving trains. Why is the train the pinnacle of this kind of action movie? Let's start with you, Mr. McHugh.
Me? Okay. It's important that I start by saying I am completely unimpressed by technical excellence. That to me is something that we owe to you. So movies that sell themselves as being technically excellent don't particularly impress me. For me, it has to be story, it has to be character, and if it happens to be technically excellent, that's great. This is a film I've loved since I was very, very young, long before I understood anything about making movies. And the longer I make movies and the more I come back to watch this film, the more impossible this film seems to be to ever have been made and made successfully. And I've also wrecked a train. Wrecking a train is very, very hard. I'm not going to give away anything about this movie, but just remember the words I'm saying. Wrecking a train is very, very hard. This movie is very, very, very endlessly very hard. Eddie and I, in doing our homework, were watching this on the plane back from New York last night, each in our separate seats. We were not watching it together. And again, revisiting in this context, watching this film and watching it shot for shot. Some of the wonders in the film, some of the technically impossible things in this movie, the number of pieces that have to actually be in sync at the same time for all of that to happen is really impressive. I don't want to talk about it too much because you'll be watching the filmmaking and not the film. I urge you all, after watching this on the big screen, just let the movie do you. Afterwards, go back and watch it again with the preface that I'm giving you now, to just turn off the sound and watch the movie and really study it for what the filmmakers were able to achieve in a time before CGI. You were looking at the end of the black and white era and the beginning of color. I think John Frankenheimer said this was the last major action film shot in black and white. This really was the end of one era and the beginning of another, and it's definitely worth watching through that filter. Just not tonight. Just tonight. Tonight. How many people have seen the train?
Yeah.
I'm so excited for everybody here who hasn't.
I
think you're really going to enjoy this movie.
That's a very good percentage who are going to lose their train virginity tonight. Eddie, why is this movie so important?
Why is it so important? For everything that Chris said, I mean, there's no models. Like, everything was done for real. So
there are some miniatures in it.
There are? I didn't think there were.
I'm glad you didn't see that.
Okay, I didn't. I thought,
if Eddie Hamilton doesn't see the miniatures.
I honestly thought it all looked pretty real to me, and the scales look pretty good. I think it's the cast is phenomenal. Burt Lancaster is doing everything himself. I mean, he's kind of, there's a whole scene where he's making like part of a train. He's like, he's pouring molten metal in and banging it, and you'll see there's a lot of one-ers where it's clearly him. He's in a way, it's very interesting that the premise of this movie is almost like a Mission Impossible movie. You've got Burt Lancaster as the team leader and the other rebels around him, the other resistance members as the IMF team trying to pull this heist off. And it's actually, this is 1964, and the first Mission Impossible TV show was 1966. So it's entirely possible that Bruce Geller may have seen this and been inspired by the concept of a team pulling off heists and clever things. And what they do in this movie is so cool and so clever. It's interesting from an editing point of view. The editor, David Bretherton, who's a legendary editor, he won an Oscar for editing Cabaret about 12 years after this. But it's beautifully, simply, it's precisely edited, and the compositions are beautiful, the performances are great. Every cut is very specific. There's nothing fast about it. It's just extremely elegant. And the music is great. Maurice Jarre wrote the score. The opening theme is fantastic. It's got incredible power. It's only ever used in the opening titles. It never resurfaces. But some of the music you'll hear has got that kind of, it's almost got a slight Lalo Schifrin-y vibe in parts of the film. The other thing from an editorial point of view is that the pace of the movie is quite unusual, obviously, compared to today's audiences, what they're used to. The central heist of the movie is actually the second act of the film. And when you're watching the movie, you'll feel like it might be the end of the movie, but it's actually the middle of the movie. And the whole third act is a lot more suspenseful, less action-based, but still awesome. And the other little tidbit of information, again, from an editing point of view, is there's a scene in the film where a Spitfire attacks the train, and that was added with additional photography during post-production when they realized there wasn't quite enough action in the first third of the movie. So that little piece, the cast was reassembled, and this is quite common nowadays, but back then it wasn't, yeah. The cast was reassembled, and they shot for an extra couple of days.
Couple of days?
Yeah, and they shot this sequence with a Spitfire. You'll see it's a very, very cool sequence.
One of the things I found very reassuring after watching this film, which having watched it dozens of times before I ever actually did any research into it, was I'm not giving anything away. Burt Lancaster, towards the third act of the movie, is injured.
That's true.
He's running across a bridge, and he's injured in the film. And I was reading an interview with John Frankenheimer, who was explaining that, and it's so integral to the story. It's so perfectly integral and comes at the absolute worst moment in the story. And John Frankenheimer was explaining that Burt Lancaster, who's doing all of his own stunts in the movie, screwed up his knee, so they just wrote it into the movie. And I was so relieved to hear that basically the more I delved into this very tightly scripted movie to find out that it's made just like all the movies are made now.
Yeah.
There were actors who went long and they couldn't stay any longer. They had contracts on other movies. So John Frankenheimer would simply have them taken outside and executed. And
in the movie. I know it
is a movie.
Hollywood in the 60s was a different place.
There are great stories about John Frankenheimer was not the original director of this film.
That's true.
Arthur Penn was actually the director. Arthur Hiller.
Yeah.
Sorry, Arthur Penn?
I believe it was Arthur Penn.
One of the Arthurs
It was
was meant to direct the film.
I'm just going to check.
Eddie's Googling now. He doesn't have a signal. This is going to kill him through the whole movie.
Okay.
It's going to kill him.
I'm sure it's Arthur Hiller, but there we go.
I'm sure it's Arthur Penn, and I usually win these bets.
Okay.
I have a Brompton bike because we had a.
That's true. You are right. You are right. Yeah. You will be right.
So Penn wanted to make a much more introspective film about Burt Lancaster's character Labiche and his relationship to art. Burt Lancaster had just done Visconti's The Leopard, which, although it was his favorite film, was also not a commercial success. Said, no way, we're making an action movie. And they had a disagreement, and John Frankenheimer came in and took over the film. Frankenheimer is somebody I want to point you to. He's not a director who is held in the same regard as a lot of his contemporaries, and I actually consider Frankenheimer to be one of the greats, one of the really unsung greats. When you're watching this film, watch the time he takes and the care he takes in explaining systems to you, all through visual storytelling. He's teaching you how to run a railroad. He's teaching you how to fix a locomotive. He's teaching you how all these things work so that you are, over the course of the story, becoming part of the team. None of that is by accident. All of that is very, very deliberate and very carefully constructed. And having made 4 of these movies now, movies like this, the amount of time and attention and the difficulty to do all those things purely visually is extremely, extremely difficult. And Frankenheimer does it quite elegantly. There will be a moment in the story you're watching just trains moving very slowly around a railroad yard, and you're kind of wondering, why are we going through all this shoe leather? It's all setting you up for something, and it's all done very, very effectively. There's not a wasted moment in the film. The other fun little anecdote I will tell unrelated to all of this. In 1940, there was a French patriot named Alexander Rosenberg. And Alexander Rosenberg was, along with many of the people in France, trying to flee the country. He made it to Dunkirk, and he actually managed to escape with the British and made it to England. While he was in England, he joined the Free French Army and came back to help liberate his country. And he was an officer in a unit that stopped a train that was slowly making its way through France on its way to Germany and was constantly being hindered by the efforts of the French resistance through paperwork to just stop this train from leaving. And Rosenberg and his unit stopped the train. They kicked off a couple of old German soldiers who were guarding it, and they inspected its contents and found all of this degenerate art. They found all of the modern art that had been looted from Paris. And the reason that Alexander Rosenberg knew the value of this art is because much of it belonged to his father. His father was Paul Rosenberg. He was, at the time, one of the preeminent art dealers in the world. And his entire art collection, including Matisse's that had been given to him by Matisse, had been stolen by the Nazis. And this event began a lifelong effort on behalf of Alexander to recover his father's art collection. 70 of the paintings are still missing. The family is still looking for this art. But also, it was the event that inspired this movie. And I thought that was a nice little anecdote to kick off the story. The building that you will see at the very beginning of the story, it's the very opening shot, is a building that was the actual building where all of this degenerate art was stored. The Nazis had declared all modern art to be degenerate. They wanted nothing to do with it, but they still recognized the commercial value of it, and they were trying to sell it to finance the war effort. And this building was referred to as the Hall of Martyrs, and it's where all of the art went that was deemed degenerate by the Nazis and was set to either be destroyed or looted. And several of the paintings that are in there are paintings that were never looted, but Frankenheimer really liked the paintings. so he put them in the movie. And I'm trying to think if we've missed any other fun little details.
I think the thing about the train yard that gets blown up in the movie, they blew up with actual TNT. Like, they blew it up for real. And there is a train going through the middle of it. And it was because the French authorities wanted to change...
They were changing the gauges
of the railroad
track. And essentially, what you're seeing here in 1964, you're witnessing a hinge point in which France is being rebuilt post-World War II, and they're rebuilding their country's entire infrastructure. They had a lot of old trains, and they had an old rail yard, and they were trying to get rid of it all, and Hollywood said, we'll help you do that. Yeah. And that's the film you're about to see.
Yeah, and it's all full-scale explosions. There's no model work there, that's for sure.
If anyone's been at Euston over a weekend, it'll feel very familiar. Right, I'm afraid that's all the time we have, folks. But the good news is you're about to watch one of the greatest action movies of all time. And if you want, afterwards, you can meet us outside, because Chris and Eddie and I will be recording a 4-hour podcast. That's it. We're not, by the way, we're not. But please enjoy the train. Give it up one more time for Chris McQuarrie and Eddie Hamilton, everybody.